So today, I'm going to be talking to Emily Peasgood, or should I say Dr. Emily Peasgood. See, I've got both of them in.
Whether floats your boat, Vic.
Yeah, exactly.
Huh?
How are you?
All right.
Have
Tired,
you had a biscuit?
busy?
No.
I've got a biscuit ready to go.
Yeah, cool. Excellent.
Yeah,
Cool. That's good. Right.
It's my lunch break.
Right. So, traditional first question is, what do you do?
Oh, goodness me. I'm trying to figure that out most of the time.
Mm.
I feel like a cross between Barry the electrician and some sort of sound artist and some sort of composer most of the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm kind of not in a fixed... It's a bit tricky because curators want me to choose one or the other, but what I do is not composition and it's not sound art, but it is. And composers wouldn't have me and sound artists wouldn't have me. So I'm somewhere in the middle.
Okay, so what's the definition?
Well, composers create music that's usually experienced with an audience sitting, listening to it, or standing in the pub or being in a festival, but normally there's a two-way relationship between the piece of music and the audience. Whereas a piece of sound art is really different because you're inviting people to be a part of it and move through it. Usually it's like specific as well. So you wouldn't really call the work that I do in ancient sites that people can walk around and look at and that bring a site to life, a composition. You're not sitting there and having a concert. So that's the main difference. But a lot of sound artists aren't trained composers and trained musicians. So I'm using that to write music that is a composition that could be performed in a concert, but I'm installing it with sound and with sound design and with bespoke technology that does things with sensors in these unusual sites. So yeah, I suppose that's fairly unique because it doesn't really fit in one of the boxes, and that's what I like about it. Because I honestly do find the idea of writing music just for performance in concerts not all that interesting. I do it still. I do occasionally. I'm doing a really fun commission at the moment for a brass band, which is great, and it's going to be a concert piece. But I'm more excited. I like to have a mixture of work going at the same time, and I'm excited by things that happen in spaces rather than that two-way relationship. And I think the reason why I feel that way is that it feels a bit more inclusive. I think a lot of concert culture and art galleries too are quite exclusive. So I'm putting it in a place where it's free and anyone can go.
That's good then.
Yeah, that's pretty
so
much
this
it.
Is obviously a long journey to arrive at this, right?
Kind
you
of,
don't just sort of start off at the age of 6 saying, I'm going to be a composer, or I'm going to be a sound artist. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So where's the journey start in your memory then?
Started with people telling me all the time to stop having stupid ideas.
Oh.
Because I was very imaginative and I had all these wacky ideas.
Like what?
Like I wanted to write music where the audience was animals instead of people.
All right.
I wanted to compose music with fart sounds. And
that's quite normal, surely.
I don't know. I've been trying to get funding for one project like that for a long time, and no one will give me any money. But yeah, I kind of saw sound. Sound was my main sense from a young age. You know, when people say, "What would you rather lose, your eyes or your ears?" And for me, it would be my eyes because I want to listen. I think that's more important to me than sight. And yeah, I was always musical. And, I went to music college as a singer, and then I did loads of gigs, like in local bands around Kent. And Yeah, I was a professional musician for quite a long time. I ran a wedding band, and we were doing jazz gigs and wedding gigs, and I just got a bit bored of it. I wanted to do my own stuff, and I'd started running a choir, and I was invited to lead a choir that met at Turner Contemporary, and that's how I got a commission. And it was a composition commission to write a piece of music inspired by this exhibit, but I ended up sort of subverting some expectations of composition a bit, and over the years I've got more and more and more of these things, and they've gone more wacky, and they've gone really site specific, and at the moment they're not including singers so much, and it's kind of evolved. But I suppose one of the unique things is a lot of what I do work with people. I have teams that work with me, but a lot of the skills I've learned because I've had a lot of condescension. I've had a lot of condescension. So at the moment, I'm learning electronics to a high standard. That's the aim, because I'm absolutely fed up of being talked down to by electronic engineers. I'm sorry to say it, but they're more often than not, they're blokes. I've had one woman work with me, and she was marvelous. She didn't talk down to me at all. But so what I do is I just learn it myself, and then I get diverted from being creative for a year because I'm learning electronical engineering. I've just started an electronics club for people that want to learn it, and they come to my house once a week.
Brilliant stuff. Actually, I've had, this has come up in conversation before with somebody, that the best way to learn something is to teach it. Actually,
yeah. I mean, I'm not teaching it so much, and I do have some knowledge, mostly of coding languages. I taught myself coding.
Right.
Because I wanted to get a job at a university, and they said, "Oh, will you teach this coding course?" And I said, "Yes," even though I didn't have a clue how to do it. And I spent the summer and learned it, and managed to successfully lead this course for 5 years.
Right.
And in the process, taught myself how to program software to run some of my exhibitions, which usually have things like sensors. People will walk into a space, and the sensors will react. I've seen
some of this.
Yeah.
Now, I want to drag you back to your childhood, because it seems to me that there's a couple of things you've said about sorting things out for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you say that's something that you've always done?
Sort stuff out for myself. Yeah, pretty much. I think it's a working class mentality. If you need something doing, just do it cheaper.
Well, that's an interesting point. I know that you live in Kent. I'm
from Binsey.
I know. I was going to say, it doesn't sound like you come from Kent.
No. No, my accent's a bit stronger at the moment because I'm sharing a studio in Margate with somebody who's also northern. So it's amazing.
Out. It's amazing how it quickly comes back, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because I don't have to spend too long with somebody from Cornwall to go back into my Cornish lilt. So, and I think that's actually something to do with an ear, a musical ear, how that comes back. I definitely think that's a thing. So anyway, going back to this this thing about, because I'm fascinated about people's journey to arriving at what it is that they do. I mean, the whole point about the podcast about creativity is a lot of these things are very subtle. And it's not until you sort of reflect on them that you sort of go, oh yeah, that's a thing that, it's the same thing over here and over there. And
I mean, I know what it is for me.
Go on then, tell me.
I was a little bit oppressed growing up, and I didn't have what you'd call free will in any sense. I know that children need to be parented, but I didn't have any free will. So I didn't get to do anything that I wanted. Like all my hobbies, including music, were all kind of very structured and very strict. And it was dancing and music and drama and all these things. I suppose I had a showbiz mum, and she succeeded because all of us do it. All of us do it now, but one's a dancer. But I was extremely repressed, and I had such big creative ideas, and I've always been so ambitious and so motivated. And as soon as I could, I kind of exploded, and people I used to say things just to shock my parents, because they were so, as I got older and I could, because it had been so structured, I'd just say stuff. I do it. My mum still goes, Emily, I say stuff that's quite shocking, and I do it now in daily life. But as soon as I could, I kind of did what I wanted. And when people say, you're so creative, you get such creative, interesting ideas, I don't actually think I do. I just think that the ideas that most people have, I just act on them. There's a difference. Like a lot of people go, oh no, I can't do that, or they just brush this stuff away. If I have an idea and I like it enough, I do it. And I don't have a filter or a boundary that most people have. I don't have it at all. And I think it's because I was so controlled.
So when did that start to kick in for you, that you realised that you were like that? What's your
I had
memory?
a filter? No, that I just do it.
You just, yeah, exactly.
I only started really just going with my gut in 2016.
Okay.
Not that long ago. I'm 41 now, so yeah, 6 years ago.
Okay.
35. I'd got divorced, and I'd always had a lot of relationships, and that being my priority. And sometimes that a lot of the people I was with weren't really happy with me being so ambitious, and I'd put stuff off to make them happy. And I got divorced, and I thought, I'm not doing that again. And I've just had the most brilliant 6 years. It's been really fun.
Okay, that's interesting. Because I'm looking at, you've got sort of let's say conventional musical beginning. That's not really true.
Pretty much,
but
it's pretty conventional.
Yeah,
like
pretty conventional.
Lessons,
you're playing in a band. Yeah. But you're playing in a band. You've got like a sort of a function band type thing, you're doing jazzy stuff and whatever. And then it diverts from that. But
I have to say though, I mean, even though 6 years ago I've really come into my own and just done what I want creatively, I've not had any filters. It still was there all my 20s. So
yes,
I mean, I should have gone to a conservatoire really
to
study at age 18, and I rebelled and I didn't do my A-level music. I rebelled and did BTEC in music tech. And then I went to City University, did music tech, but I ended up on a scholarship to a music school studying singing, but it was only part-time. So I should have been doing a different route than what I did. And it was all because it was kind of pushed on me. And after I went to university, I did do a program with English National Opera, and I just hated it. And I could see how frustrated the teachers were, because they kept saying, oh, you could be so good and you just don't try. And it took a lot to realise that I didn't really want to. But being in bands was a rebellion from like quite a classical, traditional upbringing. And, my dad was really flexible. He'd have been happy with me doing anything, but my mum really wanted us to do a certain thing. And I am glad I've had that training, but what I do now is so different. And it really is just a mixture of everything I've done. But all of that kind of rebellious streak has been there all my 20s and 30s. I've always occasionally I've done quite wacky things. Like I tried to start a band up in my mid-20s with these amazing musicians in London. And we were all going to be multi-instrumentalists and play really strange instruments. And it didn't quite take off because I didn't have the skills to be organised and actually see it through. But there were flashes of me being a bit different and trying stuff. And I just knew I wanted to be creative, but didn't quite know what I was doing. And it's really just been in the last 6 years that I've figured it out.
See, this is what I was getting at about those type of ways of seeing the world actually and operating in the world have their, you can see them in reflection quite early on. And I'm sort of interested in the fact that you looked at a lot of this stuff as a rebellion.
Yeah, initially, yeah.
Yeah.
Like rebelling. I mean, you could tell I was creative because I rebelled from classical music by learning more instruments, but they weren't classical ones.
Yeah.
So it kind of fit. But yeah, I've felt quite unable to be myself in my life. There's been a part of me that's wanted to do stuff, and then a part of me that's had this voice in the back of my head, and it's certain family members say, you can't do that, that's crazy, people will think you're weird, and you can't dress like that, and you can't be like that, and you can't say that. And it's taken quite a few years to get sorted enough, comfortable enough that I can just do it anyway and not really care what they think. And I don't really care now. I just do what I want now.
Yeah, see, there's a whole bunch of things there you're saying, because the sort of micromanaging of children's time.
Oh God, it was terrible. It was extreme.
But I see it so much, you know, to the point that how can a kid actually be good at all of the things they're going to be doing anyway? You know, they don't have enough time. They don't have enough time to be good at one of those things. You know, if they're doing their ballet and their, you know, whatever it is.
Ballet, drama, 6 instruments, and dancing was 2 or 3 hours a day. I'd be getting up really early to practice piano for 2 hours. And then I do flute in the evening. You know, I didn't go out and play. I had one really good friend growing up. I didn't have, I wasn't very good social. I wasn't well socialized at all. I was quite a strange kid, actually.
Yeah, I think actually anybody who does something different is, you know.
But actually, you know, had I had the choice, and I'd have been the sort of kid that probably didn't do ballet, that maybe did like a martial art. I'd have been more into like outdoor stuff, and I'd have definitely been into like circuitry and engineering. And growing up, that's all the stuff I wanted, was all that stuff. And I got dolls. So yeah, I really like being hands-on. I like designing. But partly I've been socialized as a woman to not like those things. And so I'm coming to it late and having a lot of people making me feel like a fool. I do quite big commissions now, and I have to have a team of sometimes up to 8 people that work with me full time on delivering an artwork. And often I get spoken to sometimes, shockingly, by people. Why don't you know that? You should know that. And they've just got no realization that, of course, I don't know it. You know, every chance I had to know it, to want to know it, it was pushed away because it wasn't something I should do. So of course I don't know. And yes, there's a lot of guys that feel that patronize women because they don't know how to change a tire on the car. It's not been that normal in the 80s. Certainly not. It wasn't normal to teach a girl how to do that. You know, that was your brother will do it, your dad will do it. Like, it's not ignorance, it's just the way it is.
That's right.
And
I think the thing is, if
sad, really.
if those people are, you know, the team of people who are doing,
I don't hire them. If they do that, that's it, they're gone.
I was going to say, if they're doing that, you say, well, you know, they turn around and say, well, you should know that. You should say, well, I'm employing you.
Yeah.
So if you were that good, you'd be employing me.
Sorry.
Can I get you some of those dressings?
Oh, yes, please. Yeah. Sorry. It's my friend stroke lodger. I had an accident this morning, and he's just offered to go and get me some dressings for my leg.
Oh.
It looks pretty bad.
Oh,
not A&E bad. Just
no. I was going to say,
pretty
you're not
mangled.
Oh,
I'm a bit mangled.
So, no, I've often thought with all this stuff that goes on Zoom, you know, I was sort of joking with a lot of other people who sort of teach and do stuff online. It's like, got a shirt on,
no pants. Well, you don't want to see what's down here. I've got my dress tucked into my knickers to keep blood from getting on my dress.
Exactly. That's exactly.
And that is not something that I want on Zoom.
No, exactly. So there we are. We'll just leave that part there. Okay. So what else? I'm still pursuing this line of inquiry, actually, because although, you know, we've sort of been, well, you can't call it friends on Facebook, but you know what I mean. Yeah. I've known of your existence in the wilds of Whitstable, particularly, because you used to play somewhere in. I
used to play all the time in Whitstable, and I left
did.
London thinking I could earn a living just doing pub gigs, and that's not how it works.
No.
But, yeah. But
so I knew of you, and so what the first thing that I noticed that you did that was a little bit out of the frame, because, you know, I just heard that you sang and you play keyboards and all this, was when you started the choir.
Okay.
And I thought that the name was brilliant.
Oh, which one was that? Was that Enquire?
Enquire.
That's my uncle's job. That he was the one who came up with that name.
Oh,
but
it was a
yeah,
great
it was
name.
temporary. Yeah, I wanted. I didn't know what to call it. I had another after that called Big Mouth Chorus. It's like an ode to this, sort of a reference to the Smiths, and that was in Margate. But yeah. I mean, we're still going. We still rehearse every Wednesday. Yeah, we're going tonight, in fact.
Cool. So now, how did that start? Because that's, again.
Oh my God, you want the truth?
Yes, I do.
Oh my God.
Tell me the truth, Emily.
The truth is, I was leading a choir called the Oyster Singers.
Oh,
and they're a really good choir. Yeah, they're really lovely, and they're led by someone else now. And I just wanted something that was more my own. I wanted to do my own choral arrangements. They like what they like is lovely. I'm not criticizing them at all, but I wanted to do stuff that was a bit more contemporary and a bit more choral and a little bit more fruity and a bit more wacky. I wanted to do Metallica arrangements in the style of a swing band song. You know, I wanted to do that kind of thing.
That sounds pretty cool.
So that was ticking away, but then there was this person in the choir who I'll call John. That's not his name. Who worked with animals. He was a vet, and I had a massive crush on him. And he told you I'll tell you the truth.
That's narrowing the field a bit. So,
and and he'd mentioned that he quite wanted a more contemporary choir too. So I set up a choir because I fancied one of the members of the Oyster Singers. And guess what? He came twice and then left.
And that was it. And you ended with a choir.
I had a choir at the first rehearsal. There were 90 people came. It was there weren't many choirs in Whitstable at the time, and they were queuing all down the street. That
is incredible. How did the word get around that you were doing that?
I just put posters up, and the amount of people that came, it was unreal. And it was always a massive choir. It's a bit smaller at the moment after COVID. We're back. We took 2 years off because there was some people in that choir that were in the 90s, and I just couldn't bear the thought of them getting ill.
Yeah.
And we took 2 years off, and we're back, and we're about 30. We're normally about 60 because quite a few people have sort of moved on, or it's been 2 years and they don't want to come back, or they've just changed their routines. But we're getting new members still every week, so I imagine it'll get back up to 60 in no time. But that's why I started it. But I'm really glad I started it because it kind of launched my career. But it was to try and spend time with a bloke I fancied.
Yep, it's rock and roll, isn't it? Do you think you got that many people from the get-go because you were playing?
Because of what, sorry?
Because you were playing in the area.
I don't know.
Because that's a lot of people.
Because I did put posters up.
I know a lot of choirs that started around about the same time as you, and they are, like you're saying, the numbers in the choir are very similar. 60 to 90 people, but it took a long time to get up to those sort of numbers.
Oh yeah, no, I had that in the first rehearsal, and it was
I know, that's what I'm saying.
I was so confused, and then
that's pretty remarkable.
Most of them are women. And then we got John Nurden when he was a journalist to come and do an article called "We Need Men." It was really funny. And then we got some men join. But
who needed women? Don't tell me.
Yeah, we've got posters at the moment out that say "We Need Men" on them as well, because we've got loads of women. I mean, the choir's still quite big, but it's about half what it was before COVID. Yeah. But every week 2 or 3 more new people come and they stay.
Yeah.
The first session back, I think we've had 8 rehearsals. The first one back, only 15 came, and now we're around 30. So
yeah, now, this is something because there's a really good choir down in Lewis that I sort of used to go and see, and then obviously sang in for a little while and stuff. And I was always amazed at the skill of leading a choir, because
it's dead hard,
bloody hard, isn't it?
It is, you've got to know all the parts really well.
Yeah.
And also be able to
and be able to and be able to just drop into one of the parts.
Yeah. Anytime,
Exactly. And that's always impressed me.
And I sometimes, because I don't have enough hands, I've got 4 groups, sometimes 8 groups. I'm known to do things with my eyebrows. I'll say to one group, well, look at my eyebrows. I'll cue you with my eyebrows. And then I'll be singing with a different group and have a hand for the other 2.
So that's what I mean. Talk about multitasking.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So that's obviously quite an important thing, you running choirs, and I know that you said that you'd studied singing.
It's become
and
less
stuff,
of an important thing. I mean, I really love it.
but
I do
it
really love
certainly
it.
started something different, didn't it?
It started
for
something
you?
different. I mean, I do love it, and I was leading 3 at one point, and it was really draining me mentally. And at the moment, I've got the Whitstable Choir, but I don't just lead it on my own because I'm too busy with my artworks. I share it with someone who's a brilliant musician, Phil Self. He's in Co-Cost Lovers and lots of other bands, and we share it. We do like 1 week on, 1 week off. Because I was going to stop the choirs just before COVID. I told both my choirs, the Margate one, Big Mouth, and Enquire, that I couldn't lead them anymore because I was too busy. I was getting lots of commissions, and I wasn't really in Kent very often. And then lockdown happened, and I kind of missed them. So I decided, I couldn't really commit to Whitstable every week, and found someone really good to share it with, and that seems to be working out.
That's good. It's good. I think they're amazing, actually, because it's such an experience singing in a choir, even if you're a singer.
It's great to teach it because you hear all of the parts, and when you're just in one group, you're only hearing your part and maybe a bit of the next group. So yeah, I think I get the best seat in the house for hearing it. And we're singing some really nice songs, so yeah.
So okay, we've got the choir thing. I want to go back to this thing about you being a little bit of a rebel. Do you think that's part of how you, like you were explaining at the beginning, that you sort of sit in between you're not really a composer, you're not really a...
I'm just doing what I want with that. It's not to do with trying to be a rebel. It's just what I do.
But what I'm saying is that's not exactly what I mean. It's that thing of you're not following a particular path, are you?
I will not have somebody tell me how to work and what to do.
Exactly.
I just will not have it, because I honestly think I know best, and I trust people, and I employ 2 lovely people, and I trust them. But nearly all the time, when I've relinquished a really important decision to someone else, or gone with a decision that I thought was better than mine, my original suggestion was right. And I just know my field really well. So yeah, I won't be told by anyone how to do anything.
No.
I've been told for too long, it's just not going to happen anymore.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think that happens a lot with creative people, that you have a gut feeling about something.
Yeah, you just got to go with it.
And you have, because, you know, when people explain the logic behind how that thing won't work, then you discover later that you were right all along. Yeah. Because there's something else that wasn't factored in. And you should have just gone ahead with your own plans. I know from my own experience, I would say that's the case. I mean, if you're creating something, you're going to know, aren't you?
Of course, yeah. And I just can't be bothered with people telling me what to do. I mean, that being said, I sometimes hire people to give me advice, and I want it. I want the advice, and I take it on board. But yeah, I definitely do what I want to do, and nearly always it's out the box a bit weird, but that's just what I want to do.
So tell me about what was your first piece of work that you would say is, you know, more in your sort of way of working now?
I did a choir project where the choir were inside a lift, and the audience could call the lift to different floors for different movements of the work. So it was like the lift was a traveling stage. And the choir was it was at Turner Contemporary because they had a lift that fit 100. And I wanted to do it because I really liked the acoustic of that lift. And I said to them, do you not think we could use this lift as a performance space? It's massive, this lift. You could put furniture in it. Could be quite a sizable bedroom, for example. And they said yes. And it was called Lifted, and we toured it. After that, we went to the South Bank Centre. We did an Asda tour. We had to do like a different version of it for smaller lifts where there was banks of lifts, and I'd split the choir up. So like the sopranos were in one and the altos, and that was quite funny because sometimes the audience would be calling lift and they were synchronized, sort of, that we kind of organized it, and then one lift would go missing. But it was an acoustic performance where you only heard background like Muzak, cheesy lift music, when the doors were shut between floors because I don't like it. And then when the doors opened, you'd get a movement for that floor. And it's got a lot of movements, so it can be done in really tall high rises. And occasionally it's picked back up again and people go, I want to do like a lifted performance. So I'll get the choir back together that did that. So that was the first one. And that was really fun. And yeah, it was produced
that's
by
such a brilliant
Contemporary. Yeah, thanks. But yeah, I really loved that. And yeah, the piece, there was the situation, and I wrote the piece to suit the acoustic of lifts. But then the kind of concept was more about how we take really normal things for granted, like lifts, and also all the internal dialogue when we're in shared public transport, where like this morning I fell over and really hurt myself, and I was sat on the street for 20 minutes and all the people that walked by, not one person stopped to help me. I was sat on my bum with my shoes off and my leg bleeding everywhere. Nobody thought, I'm just going to help her. Like, you know, when you're on the tube and nobody says anything, or if you say hi, they think you're mad. It was the text was about that, and about how we're all sort of stuck in our own internal dialogue. And the lyrics were mind the doors of your mind, mind the doors of your mind. And it was a bit weird, but it totally worked, totally. And the lift, there was a lift operator who was involved, and it was a very theatrical performance, and everyone was dressed in grey. They looked like worn down businessmen with briefcases, and they were tiered on these little stools, so it looked like a staging in there, so you could see everyone. And there was a beatboxer, and it was in a lot of parts, 12-part harmony with a beatboxer, and it looked amazing. People would just call it, and they could control what movements they got and go to different floors.
That's brilliant. I was talking about this, you know, you sitting injured, or sitting injured on a street.
Yeah.
I was rereading a book about influence by this guy called Robert Cialdini.
Yeah.
And he actually talks about this thing about people being, who are injured on a street, being ignored.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of people that walk past me, God.
Yeah, well, apparently it's something to do with, it's like social confirmation. It's like if nobody else is doing something, it must be all right.
It was so obvious that I was injured. It was in a really obvious part of Ramsgate, big bit of street. No one would just sit on the pavement there, especially not me. No. And it was so obvious. I had my dogs with me, 2 dogs on a lead, and and I took my shoes off and I was going, and my leg was bleeding, and somebody walked past and went, good morning.
That's weird, isn't it?
Like, I once had a tea party and invited some friends round and did a little experiment, because I think sometimes when things are out of context, people don't know how to take it.
Yes, my God, yes.
So I had a cake stand with 3 tiers, and it had cakes on it. And all around the cake stand and on the table, I put great big dildos, because I used to write sex columns with my auntie, who's a sex expert, and she'd send me all these things.
We'll come back to that.
I put them on the table, and my friends came and we had a tea party, and no one noticed till the end. And then someone went, "Oh, there's a dildo on the table."
Really?
Yeah,
I thought
they didn't notice.
So they casually stirred their tea.
No, it wouldn't want to fit in a teacup. They did not notice this thing. And it was like a desk thing, a desk ornament, massive, like you want it. And I put it there and no one noticed.
Amazing. Because it's out of context.
Yeah, and I was there in quite a nice dress on the floor in a sunny day with my glasses on, and my hair was all floaty. And I was just sat on the pavement, and nobody thought. I think they just thought I was having a rest.
Yeah, probably. I don't know.
It's just so strange. And then I asked someone to help me because I couldn't get hold of anyone. And
that's fascinating.
Did you say it's a blonde thing?
No, I said with blood coming out your leg.
Oh, sorry, I thought you said it's blood. No, and no, in the end, this guy lifted me up, and then my dog bit him. So that was funny. dog just went for him because he's only a little dog with a tiny, tiny mouth. So yeah.
Yeah, but he's protecting you, the dog.
He thought he was protecting me. But yeah, I couldn't get hold of anyone. My lodger was not answering his phone, and my assistant was not answering her phone. And yeah, it was just yeah, very strange. But people sometimes do that.
Yes, I think again, this is another one of these things I'm fascinated by. It's about how we operate within life, and how much of it is sort of almost programmed.
Yeah.
Or it's like a reaction. And I
Yeah.
think this is what's interesting about your work, because it challenges a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't it?
That lifted piece definitely did, because I was inspired as well. There was this experiment in New York in the subway. I think it was in 2009, and this very famous violinist, Joshua Bell, was playing,
Joshua
and no
Bell.
one bloody noticed.
Yeah.
And that definitely inspired me, because I wanted to create something really beautiful in a place that people take for granted.
Yeah.
And so when we did the tour, we didn't tell people in Asda about the performance, but we did advertise the premiere at Turner Contemporary, and it was very heavily advertised at South Bank Centre. But when we did the tour, it wasn't announced. And we chose Asda because they've got banks of lifts. There's always more than two, so there's always a lift for people that need it if we do our performance. But it was amazing because quite a lot of people sent emails, found it online. You know, we didn't have any posters out. They just found us and emailed and said how much they loved it and how much of a surprise it was. But it was interesting, you know, hiding things that are really interesting in plain sight.
Yes.
And also, I'm really obsessed with lifts. And I always used to imagine like all the amazing things that would be behind the doors when they opened. And nearly always it would just be a fed up person. It doesn't want to. So I thought they were super magical when I was a kid. Yeah.
They sort of are in a weird way, aren't they?
They're amazing. They're amazing. Yeah.
They certainly exert a certain amount of power over people, because some people don't like getting into them.
Yeah.
You know, people have phobias of getting into lifts and stuff.
Yeah.
So probably not one the size of the Turner Contemporary lift.
Oh, it's
obviously
enormous. Yeah. And you know what? My we put a GoPro on the ceiling to record the performance, and the bloody stand is still there. We could never get it off. I went to the Turner the other day and it's still there. They've obviously just accepted it as part of the furniture. It's from my premiere.
Really incredible.
Yeah.
So that's a fascinating idea. So when did you? And obviously you've got a keen eye about lifts anyway, as you said, you've always found them fascinating. But how did that idea arrive? Just because you were contemplating lifts?
I just stood in the lift and sang in it one time. I thought, yeah, I'm going to put a whole choir in here. That was pretty much. And then I went and sat. I was in Folkestone Triennial in 2014. There was an artist who made a platform from the top of the Bursting Hotel in Folkestone, and it was suspended from the top of the building. So I think it was like, what was it, like 200 feet? And it was an extreme camping ledge, like the size of a camping bed, and it was stuck out from the building. And he called it Lookout, Alex Hartley, and he was going to sit on it for the duration of the triennial and write diary entries about being at that perspective of Folkestone, but he couldn't do it for the whole time. So I did it. I did it. I had to do climbing training. I was scared of heights too, but I'm not anymore from doing that. And there was a little tent and you could sleep there, but it was so small. It was like the size of a trestle table. And we had to do all this climbing training. There was a few of us that were going to stand in for him. And I'd got the idea. I talked to the gallery and they'd said, yeah, we like this idea. We'll help you get funding for it and we'll produce it with you. And then I went up and did that and wrote the piece while I was up there. I took a tiny little keyboard and developed the concept more and thought about what it could mean and researched background music, you know, Muzak, looked at stuff like stimulus progression, like the way music can be used to control us in certain retail environments. And
that's cool.
did loads of I did loads of research and kind of got the main ideas for the piece sorted while I was up there on this ledge really high up. And that's what gave me the idea to call it Lifted as well. But yeah, the idea just came out of nowhere, and then I developed it there, and that was a good thing. I'm glad I did that because it got me under the radar of the curatorial team for the triennial, and I got a massive commission a year later, and it launched my career.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So what follows that then?
Sorry?
What did you do next?
I went in a graveyard that no one had been in for 150 years. There were non-conformists buried there that weren't allowed to be buried in Anglican graveyards.
Okay, so where was that?
Folkestone.
I like graveyards.
It was an ancient graveyard. It was seriously overgrown, and I wanted to do an artwork that made people want to stand in front of these graves of people that were, outcasts, that had been largely ignored, and made them stand there. And I was looking with the curator at all these sites for an artwork, and I went in there and I just knew what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to make each gravestone sing the narrative of the person buried there so we can learn about them. And I only want it to sing when someone's standing there. And I want all of them to harmonize together so they form a full work. So if one person goes in, they hear one little melody about one person, and someone else goes in, it harmonizes with it. And it was like people could create a choir by standing in front of gravestones, and each person added an extra voice. And I did it. It was complicated as hell to plan because you think there'd be an off-the-shelf solution for this, and there is not. It had to be made as a bespoke software, working with an engineer that writes code for Disney. It was complicated, but we did it. And my career was launched. I was in all the broadsheets writing about this piece, saying it was magical, and I've worked off it since. People just offer me stuff. I still apply for things sometimes, but I get offered a lot of commissions, and I've done a lot of artworks about death and exploring this idea of remembrance. And the thing about it that really worked was that you had to stand still and listen to hear it. And people wanted to, and then strangers would talk to each other and arrange to stand in all the spaces so they could hear it all. And then the minute you walked away, it just faded away. It's like, you're not there, the voice isn't there. It kind of captured something conceptually that was it just felt really tight and cohesive. And yeah.
That's such an amazing idea. Did you say that was in Broadstairs?
No, that was in Folkestone.
In Folkestone
Triennial in 2017, yeah. A year
after the graveyard?
It's this graveyard. It's not open to the public. It's if it were owned by the council, it would have stayed as a permanent artwork, but because it's privately owned, it couldn't, and it's a real shame. But I've done a piece like that since in this graveyard in London called Crossbones, which was even stronger. I mean, it was sculptural as well. It had all these big sculptures because that graveyard just looked like cement ground. The ground was all cement, so I made it look like a graveyard. And then I'm developing a touring COVID-19 memorial that has a similar kind of vibe, and that's going to be a big work starting next year. We're just at the moment developing all the tech and working on we're trying to do some audience participation. We're going to be launching a big open call in a few weeks for people to send us stories about people they lost in the pandemic. And yeah, so I mean, that's one strand of my practice is artworks that explore death. But I'm always trying to convey with sound things that we don't think of, because a lot of people think of art as being visual, but I view sound as a material, and it can tell us so much about places, not just stories, but also how old things are, the shape of things. Like it's really, I think all the juiciest ideas in sound come from what we can learn when we get rid of our sight. Yeah, so that's kind of, I mean, this is what I did my PhD in, in creating like musical artworks with communities. And sometimes the communities are real people that I work with, and sometimes they're dead people. I'm trying to bring the stories back to life.
Yes, brilliant. It's a sort of necromancy.
Kind of.
Sort of. It is. That is such an amazing thing. Because what I find fascinating about this is we've forgotten about the dead. I mean, traditionally as a culture, we stopped doing the prayers for the dead and everything when the Reformation kicked in. It was something that people did as an observance, and over that period of time to now, we've become sort of death phobic, haven't we? I think we don't like to
I'm,
deal with
I'm
it.
definitely death phobic. I think that's why I'm fascinated with it.
Yes, possibly you've rebelled against your own phobia.
I always try and I tell you what I do, I always try and make an artwork out of something that freaks me out. Because it's the only way. So like when I had my hip replaced, I got permission after lots of effort from the ethics board at the hospital to record the surgery, just the sound, and I was going to make a piece out of it for a commission. And it never happened because the commission was cancelled during COVID, but it was going to be called Hip Hop.
Yeah,
and I got profiled in the Independent called the Hip Hop Composer, which was well funny. But for me, it felt like I could only go through with that surgery if I was going to make a piece of art with it.
That is such a cool thing. That is such a cool thing.
It does just sound like lots of hammering though and sawing. And I'm chatting to the surgeon because I wasn't asleep. I just had an epidural.
Amazing.
I was
That's
awake.
incredible. So, but again, I've always felt that art and music would have been something about how you use the art to deal with life instead of it just being something that was, a commodity.
Mm.
And obviously people would have told stories about events. Sometimes those events would have been very troubling events, but they would have told stories or sang songs and everything. And I think that's something, again, you doing that with this idea, an operation and all your pieces of work have got fantastic titles, obviously. They're very
well,
humorous.
one of them was terrible, I have to say.
How terrible is terrible?
Oh, it's terrible. I mean, I was really struggling to come up with this idea for a piece in the.
It wasn't called Song 2 or anything.
It was no. It was a piece in the funicular lifts in Hastings, and I think I just got a bit up my own backside, and I called it The Illusion of Conscious Thought, and it means nothing. It's not anything to do with the piece, which is about social mobility. It's just a stupid title, and I just got I got in a conceptual loop that just went up my rectum. I came up with the stupidest title ever, and it just makes no sense. But the piece was good, but the title, all
right, all the other piece titles are good. All your other titles are good.
Sorry, this is Danny.
Hello, Danny.
She's the sound artist assistant. She's marvelous.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
There she is. So anyway, you've put me off my track now.
Sorry.
No, that's cool. So what's the last thing that you did? Was that the one that was on the beach?
Beacons, yeah.
Beacons, yeah.
With the singers wearing horns.
Yes.
Yeah. I worked with an artist called Alison Neighbour. She had this idea. She contacted me and said, "Can we make like a piece that's performed on beaches with?" And I was like, "Yes, let's do it." And it was really fun because it's the choral work, but there's a technology element. There's a huge treasure hunt beforehand where people go into the community and they collect these glowing orbs which look like sea gooseberries.
Yes.
And they put them in the window. And then on the performance, they bring them to the beach and then they respond to, they're part of the performance. And it's a little bit like a fantasy because there's a story to it. It's about working together as a whole to like improve our society. And this piece had a story relating to climate change. And it was just fascinating. And it was such a magical experience, really quite epic, the scale of it. When I look back at drone footage, just of how many people were there and the way it looked. The bonfire was licking my face. I was one of the singers. It was licking my face at one point. I thought, I'm going to lose my hair. But it was quite a magical experience, that project. And we'd love to do it again, but at the moment it's just planning it and the cost of it's quite a lot.
Yeah.
Well, that was the one I did. I've done a few since then. That was in December. I've done a few pieces since then.
I saw one that you did in it looked like it was in an art gallery, but it also looked like it was in a swimming pool.
Yeah, it was meant to look like that because it's called When I Grow Up I Want to Be a Ship, and it was in Southampton, and you could hear the piece above water, in the shallow water, and underwater by moving up a tower at different heights, and it was about how in Southampton all the industry has reclaimed the sea, and how it's all going to be reclaimed by the sea.
That's
In
a
climate
great idea.
predictions. That was
Yeah.
fun. Yeah, I mean, at the moment I'm working in Ashford on a piece called Fantasy Fountain, and it's in Victoria Park. There's this huge fountain, the Hubert Fountain, and I was commissioned to research its musical history, because they said it was a musical fountain, and to create a piece that sounds like how it might have sounded, and to work with kids. So we did all these cool workshops where we were making sounds with water and making water instruments, like bird whistles. We made them from scratch. But in the process of researching it, I learned that it was never musical. So it was never a musical fountain. And when we contacted the company that still exists, and they've never made a musical fountain. And I've traced this folklore, this urban myth, back to the original person who started it. And so we're calling it Fantasy Fountain, and we're still making a sound piece that would be how it does sound if it were a fountain, but it's called Fantasy Fountain. Because
that's interesting, isn't it?
I love the false narrative. I think it's ace.
Yes, well, okay, because I mean, lots of stories are, if you really knew.
I think it's great though.
Yeah.
Because why not make it a fantasy fountain? And Danny right now is we're making a puzzle for children where they can make their own fantasy fountain with all different elements that you'd get in a fountain, and they can put it all together in different ways to make their own fantasy fountain.
Fantastic. Cool stuff. So, okay, so what are you working on now? We need to talk about where people can find your stuff, actually.
Okay, I'll give you a summary. I'm doing about 8 projects at the moment. So there's the Fantasy Fountain, which I'm finishing. I'm working with Oxted Brass, which are a brass band, to create them a march, which is going to be super fun. Really enjoying that. I am working with Southampton Music Hub on writing them a book of sea shanties for a big event next year called the Big Shanty Sing, and it's 900 kids all singing that. So they're my sort of composition-y things. And then I am developing a climate change songwriting project, which is very much in process. My touring COVID memorial is underway. What have I missed? There's others. I can't remember. There's so many.
That's amazing. How do you organise yourself to be able to do all those things?
I have 2 amazing assistants that work with me, and I'm very organised and have a diary. and schedule my time to different tasks.
Yeah. I was going to say, you have to do that.
But I have evenings and weekends off, so it's not all bad.
Cool. Unless you're running a choir.
Unless I'm running a choir, or it's the lead up to an install, or I'm not in Kent, then in which case I'm just working all the time.
Right.
But, yeah, and I've got a website. It's Emily Peasgood. Peas just with one E after the P. Peasgood. .com. Yeah, just put my name in Google, it'll come up.
Yeah, well, I'll put some stuff on the show notes anyway, because I tried to do a little bit of a blurb.
I think there's like a wiki somewhere. Someone made a wiki. You could
get
some stuff from that.
There is a wiki.
Because that says I'm a public artist, which is different. But maybe I am. I don't know. I think I'm lots of things. I don't know. I hate categories.
No, they're rubbish, aren't they? Really?
Yeah.
It's like my leading first question when we start off, and I say, "What do you do?"
Yeah.
Just to be quite honest, that's a stupid question, really, but it gets the ball rolling, and it sort of. It's in actual fact, it's more. I get more out of how people answer that question than what they actually say.
But I've just remembered the biggest thing I've got going on, and I totally forgot to mention that.
Yeah, go on then.
It's an artwork I finished last year for Dover, for Fort Burgoyne, which is next to Dover Castle, and it's a big artwork. It's going to be permanent, and you go into the fort, and you hear voices coming through the walls as you cross a bridge, and it's like a really powerful soundscape, and 400 local people helped me make it. Wow. That's going to be installed in September. I forgot about that. I think it's not on my radar because it's finished. We're just waiting for a date to go and do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a biggie. So cool. Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah,
good stuff.
I'm really happy with it all. I like what I do. I love it.
Yeah, sounds amazing.
And it's varied enough to keep my ADHD happy. and I always manage to finish as well, and that nothing's unfinished anymore. It's all,
Yeah.
top and tailed every project. So yeah.
Good stuff. Anyway, Emily, that's great. Thanks for your time. That was really fascinating. And as I say, I've never actually spoken to you before, but I've been on, you've been on my radar for quite some time. So cool stuff. Anyway, so thanks ever so much for your time.
No probs.
A big thanks to Emily. I've put some links to some of the videos of the artworks. They're amazing, so check them out. And obviously all the other stuff that's on the show notes to do with other projects and things. Okay, so until next time, see you then.